Everybody, just before we get started with the show here, I want to make a quick shout out to the good folks at Springs Homes for supporting Studio 809 and this podcast. They're in the business of real estate because they love helping clients achieve their goals. Competitive, collaborative, and trustworthy. Meet the real estate pros at springshomes.com.
This is Studio 809.
Everybody, welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website at hikingbob.com for links to my social media accounts, my columns of the Colorado Springs Independent, my other podcasts, my photography website, my book on hiking in the Pikes Peak. There's an awful lot of stuff on my website. I don't know. Anyway, it's a nice new-looking website and got all kinds of information on it, plus also how you can contact me or sign up for my newsletter, which comes out every weekend and kind of summarizes things that happen during the week and also any other news that's come up in the meantime. There's a lot of stuff that I don't get to put in my column and maybe stuff that comes up after the podcast is done. And so we catch up with the stuff like that on the newsletter. Today, I'm with my co-host, Kevin Westendorf.
Hey, everyone. It's Kevin Wild Westendorf here. It's great to be here. It's usually a highlight of the week. I'm kidding. It's always a highlight.
Kevin needs to get out more.
Yeah, and you can find me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Wild Westendorf, and my website, wildwestendorf.com.
Well, thanks, Kevin, for being here. The day we're doing this, and usually we record these on Monday because of some scheduling. We're doing it on Tuesday evening, so it's being recorded mere hours before it goes live. And it's, Saturday, Sunday, Monday were beautiful warm days. Today, when this airs on Wednesday, Thursday, not so much.
It's gross out there.
It is cold, and I don't mind. I'm not a wuss. I mean, I like cold weather. I have gear for cold weather. I've hiked in cold weather, snowshoed. You and me, and probably 99% of the people listening to this podcast have done stuff in cold weather. It's part of the charm of living in Colorado. But what's bad about this is we've had a lot of warm weather, so a lot of the snow is melted. We're not getting much snow with this, although they just upgraded. We may be getting some today when you listen to this into Thursday. But there's no snow with it, so it's just bitter cold with no snow. It's like, bleh.
Yeah, it's boring.
Yeah, if you're going to give me, when I woke up this morning, it was, according to my weather station, 0.1 degrees. I didn't know you could have a 0.1 degrees, but apparently you can. And that would be fine, and I would like it even better if I had like a foot of snow so I can strap on the snowshoes.
Oh, yeah.
And to be fair, it was a beautiful looking day. It was, bright sky, bright sunny skies and stuff, but boy, was it cold. Cole and I went for a walk, and, I wish I had 2 coats of fur like he does.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't have bothered me nearly as much. But so winter's here. Moisture is here. Moisture's coming. That's good. I don't know how that compares, how that stacks with how short we are. I'm sure we haven't made much of a dent, but most certainly it's better than nothing. Unfortunately, you had to work today in a warehouse with doors going up and down as trucks are coming and going.
Yep.
I can't imagine that was a whole lot of fun.
I'm going to sleep good tonight.
I bet. So if you're out there, folks, don't forget, stay warm, dress in layers. And really, if it gets to be too bad, just stay home. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay to stay home. You don't lose any brownie points because you stayed home on a day that it was miserable cold. And this front that's coming through, and like I said, by the time this airs, it may be coming through already. They're predicting 5 to 9 inches of snow, 30 below degree wind chill factors. There's no extra points if you go out and that stuff. It's okay to stay home and wait till the weather calms down. And, over the weekend when we have some snow and it warms up a little bit, take the snowshoes, go hiking, go sledding, go skiboarding, what is it, snowboarding?
Skiboarding.
Skiboarding.
It's a new sport.
Hey, listen, I just invented it. Nobody can use that. So anyway, it's okay to do that. It's okay to take a day off. And you know what? On Monday, I kind of chilled. I really just chilled and kicked back and didn't do a whole lot of anything because I was out all weekend and stuff. It's okay.
And next week is going to be in the 60s, so it's going to be awesome next week.
If you take a day off, nobody's going to call you a couch potato when you spend the rest of your life out there outside doing something.
Exactly.
So it's all okay. Give yourself a pat on the back and go out there and do that. Talking about weather and outdoor recreation and all that kind of stuff, we're going to kind of go back a little ways. So some months ago, you and I talked about a case that happened in Northern California.
Yep.
Where a family and their dog were unfortunately found dead on a trail. And I think it was last summer. And for a long time, nobody could figure out what happened. And there were all kind of theories. Was it foul play? Quickly ruled out. There were no wounds on anybody or anything like that. There was an algae bloom in the creek near where they were, so there's some concerns about a toxic gas that could come off that, which is possible. These things happen, sewer gas and stuff like that. That was ruled out. And eventually, and we talked about this when we had our podcast about this a few months ago, it was determined that it was due to basically heat stroke, exposure to too much. It was very hot at that week that they were out there, and there was some skepticism, not amongst me or you, but some people posting on the internet. And to be fair, the internet is full of experts.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's an expert. And there were people on there who said, there's no way that could have happened. You can't, in that area it doesn't get that hot. There's no way that could happen. Well, okay, people who know a lot more than you do probably figured all that stuff out. People went to school for many, many years and pathologists who know how to look at things like that. They figured it out. But in any case. Oh, yeah.
I thought it was weird when the report came out that it was due to heat. I was just like, that just sounds weird. It sounds off to me. But I'm going to trust the experts because I don't know much about that stuff and how the body works in heat and such like that. And yeah, so I was just like, if they say it's due to heat, then I guess it is.
Yeah, and usually when we've heard of cases where this happened before, typically, and we talked about one that happened in October in Arizona on a trail that I'd actually been on, where there were two of them out there. One of them ended up dying of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and the other one went back. Typically, it's not normal for a group of people to die of this.
Yeah.
And that's what really struck people. How does it happen to everybody at the same time?
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get that part of it, but as a family, they're sticking together, trying to support each other. There was a baby involved who unfortunately died. Reason why we're bringing this back up was the sheriff's office that investigated, the agencies that investigated, had gotten a hold, and I think the FBI was very heavily involved in this part of it. They had the phone or phones from the family that they recovered, but it took them a long time to crack into them to retrieve data. And what they found was text messages and photographs and screenshots showing their location on mapping apps that they didn't say which one they were using. More than likely all trails, I would guess, and missed phone calls. And around the time, and they were able to. Matter of fact, the one message that they attempted to send, and these messages didn't go out because there's no service. Found a lot of information on here that basically helped them determine what it was. There's another one here, a text message they attempted to send to a friend. Can you help us? We're on the Savage Lundy Trail, heading back to Heights Cove Trail. No water, overheating with the baby. 13 minutes following that unsuccessful text, they tried calling multiple phone numbers. None of them were 911. But again, if you don't have service, it doesn't matter who you're trying to call. It's not going to go through. Due to lack of service, the calls never connected. First call was made at 12:09, and then there were 4 subsequent calls at 12:35 within 1 minute of each other. So whoever's got this phone is trying frantically to get a hold of somebody to come help them. There were photos on the cell phone. One was taken just a few yards from the trailhead, 7:44 in the morning. So they have a timeline now. When you take a picture, there's a timestamp with it. So there's a date and time. I can look at all the pictures that get uploaded from my phone. I can tell exactly when they were taken. Date and time are on there. There were photos of them by the river and the creek, and then there's a screenshot of their location from a trail up at 12:25. And remember, they were trying to make phone calls from 12:09 to 12:35. So that screenshot probably where they were when they were trying to get help. They were probably even trying to attempting to text that screenshot to somebody. So in any case, this is how they figured this all out. This is how they confirmed what I'm sure the coroner told them and what other evidence they had there. And there were a number of people involved. There's a picture on this thing, and I'll have a link to it in the show notes. It's from CNN with a map of this area and with where they all took the pictures. And you can't help but wonder they were horribly underprepared. And of course, the thing is with this is they started out early in the morning. It probably wasn't that hot. But as the day progressed, it got hot, and you and I talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
Day's going to get hotter as you go along, and be careful with that stuff. An unfortunate situation, sad situation.
It was terrifying. It's sad, yeah.
I can't imagine how horrible they felt, and how, as your brain is heating up, how disoriented you get, and how maybe they were trying to call 911, and by a certain time you can't function, and
oh, yeah.
Your brain, you don't know what you're doing. It's a horrible situation, and we're not victim blaming at all. Like everything else we talk about here, when we talk about these kind of things, we want these to be an educational thing, and nobody really thinks about that as in Northern California. This is not too far from Yosemite. I've been to Yosemite, around Memorial Day. It was pretty cool. It wasn't very hot at all. So just keep this in the back of your mind. Think about when you go out there, whether it's in the winter and you need to bring layers to stay warm so you don't freeze to death, whether it's in the summer, you need to bring plenty of water and shade so you don't overheat yourself to death. Think about also communications. You and I talk about this a lot. Do not trust your cell phone. Do not think your cell phone is going to get out of trouble. When you need it, like these folks did, it wasn't going to work. And it may have worked all the way up until that point. And it may have been to the point that was the one spot along that trail where there's no cell phone coverage. Don't assume that's going to work for you. And please do not become an incident like this.
And I can't remember if it was you that said this or if I read it somewhere else, but obviously you don't want to drink creek water because it can get you very, very sick. And I'm not sure how that would work with the baby, but I have been told that if you are desperate to go ahead and drink that, because you would then survive and just get sick later, but then you could go to a hospital and stuff to deal with that rather than dying. And
I think I mentioned that in one podcast a ways back, and I learned that from a survival person. Especially if you're worried about Giardia, which is one of the more vicious things that can be in the water here. It has a incubation period of probably close to a week. So if you're absolutely, I'm going to die unless I drink water, drink the water.
Yeah.
When you get rescued, go to a medical professional. You'll probably be taken to a hospital to be checked out anyway. Tell them you drank untreated water, and they will probably just put you on a round of antibiotics before you start to have the effect of it. There are some things that act a lot quicker. E. coli acts a lot faster, and that could actually backfire on you because when you start having diarrhea and stuff, you're going to dehydrate even faster.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is the way to go, the way to survive, but I think I would rather risk it and drink the water, like you said, and at least stay hydrated than die next to a creek. Now, this water, the water in this lake was probably not that great. It probably didn't even smell that good. If they had this algae bloom, I don't know. We don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah.
We knew what they were trying to do. But yeah, if Giardia is what you're worried about, understand that it has an incubation period of a while. So you're not going to get sick from it right away. Boy, if you got to do it, just drink the water and get to a hospital as soon as you can and get a round of antibiotics going, and maybe you won't get that sick. I don't know that anybody's ever died of Giardia. I guess you wish you died when you have it. But I don't know that anybody's ever died of it unless it's not been treated at all or anything.
Especially if you're not lost. If you know your way back and like, okay, I've got 3 miles to go left to get back to the car. Yeah, just drink it and then take that risk.
Yeah, and get to a hospital, get to a doctor, get treated, and maybe you can even get by without getting any of the effects of it, get treated. But yeah, that's something to think about. But that's got to be, for me, that would be like last minute.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of a thing. But hey, you know what? It beats dying out there. So that's more about this incident. I'll have a link to the CNN article. It's really well thought out. It was 2 parents, a child, a 1-year-old, unfortunately. These things happen. The best we can always tell you here is give you some tips on how to avoid it. And if nothing else, learn a little lesson from this. And don't forget, too, I'm working on a column for the Indy it's going to come out a little later. Talk about, the 10 essentials and why they're there. And don't ever think that, I'm going on this short hike, what could happen? Anything could happen.
Yeah.
Which is why when I carry my pack, I carry the same pack whether I'm going on a 1-mile hike or a 10-mile hike or a 12-mile hike. If I carry it all the time, then I don't forget anything.
Exactly.
I make seasonal adjustments to it. So some stuff goes in. Obviously, I'm not going to be clipping my yak tracks on it in July. But I make seasonal adjustments to it. I may carry more water in the summer than I do in the winter. But I always carry that pack with the same basic gear in it, so it's always there, and I never forget to bring it with me. And I think, Kevin, you and I talked about this when I was a firefighter. We trained the way we would work.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We didn't take any, when we trained with all the gear, all the hose. We ran water through that hose, and that water's heavy, and that hose is heavy to drag. But if you didn't train that way, then when the real thing came, you were not properly equipped, and you didn't have the mental... you mentally you weren't prepared for it because when we trained, we used hose that didn't have any water in it because we were just dragging it around, and that was pretty light. Now this hose has got water in it. Now all of a sudden it's heavy, and then you're not ready for it. Then everything gets thrown out of whack. So do the little hikes like you do the long hikes. Now, if you're obviously you're not going to carry your backpacking pack with you when you go on a 2-mile hike unless you're training for that.
True.
But if you carry the basics with you all the time, then you always have the basics with you. And hopefully this doesn't happen to you. So I thought it was interesting. I really appreciate it. I tell you what, I was really impressed with the sheriff's office there, and it was a lot of agencies. The FBI was involved, a lot of agencies involved in this investigation. I think it was really good of them to do that too, because I think the family that died were owed to it to understand what happened. The rest of us who recreate outdoor want to know what's happening, and how it could be avoided, and lessons that we can learn. I think it's good that, fortunately, we knew there was no foul play. There wasn't somebody running around there hurting people or anything like that. Kevin, here's kind of a goofy thing for you. Now, I'm a person of a certain age. I'll leave it at that. That, when I was a kid, and I grew up in rural New Jersey, and I know a lot of people think New Jersey is like you see in the beginning of The Sopranos with oil refineries and factories. And I actually grew up in a very rural part of New Jersey. Of course, like anywhere else, it's grown up quite a bit since I lived there. But there were houses only on one side of the street, and there were no sidewalks, and it was just a paved street and houses lined up, and everybody had about a half to 3/4 of an acre of land. It was a nice place to grow up. And very rural, but I would walk 3/4 of a mile to school by myself, across at least one pretty busy road to get there. Not a highway per se, but a 2-lane, but a busy road. And nobody thought the more of it. We would play till it got dark. And if my mom wanted me, or my brother or my sister, they would probably call up and down to the neighbors, say, if you see my kids, tell them to come home. And they would do the same. It was that kind of a neighborhood. And a lot of people my age, and you have to be as old as me, but we grew up that way. And we played in the woods, and we, built tree houses and built forts and dug holes in the ground, and we did all that kind of stuff. Nobody, mom and dad were working, and they didn't have time to keep an eye on us all the time. And before we get anywhere, I'm not faulting anybody for their parenting. I just want to make that clear. But unfortunately, those days kind of went away, and to a certain degree. In some places, some people, when they see a kid walking down the street by themselves, they get concerned. If there's a kid playing at a playground by themselves, mom and dad aren't around, they get concerned. And next thing you know, the police are being called, and family services is being called, and they're knocking on the door of the parents, and the parents goes, my kid's playing at the playground, what's the problem? And in most cases, to be fair, there's nothing to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, you're right. Your kid's having fun. Your kid's being a kid. Imagine that.
Weird.
Yeah, kids being a kid. In any case, there's a bipartisan measure in Colorado that is flying through the state capitol. Boy, am I happy to see that, A, it's bipartisan, and B, there's almost no objection to it. Okay. That would clarify that it isn't child abuse for children to play outside or stay home without their parents.
Good.
Holy cow. Why did we have to get to the point where this had to be a law that said it's okay for your kid to walk down the street? Now, and I'll be fair, I appreciate that there are neighbors who are at least keeping an eye on kids around their neighborhood, who know, hey, that's the Joneses kid from down the street. Let's just make sure they're okay. I like that. I like that neighbors watch out for each other.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that neighbors, know where the other neighbors' kids are. So if something happens, Mrs. Smith calls Mrs. Jones and says, "Hey, have you seen my kid?" "Yeah, they're down at the playground. I just saw them there a little bit ago." I like that neighbors watch out for each other. I like that. My neighbors here, we all watch out for each other. And we keep an eye on things and bring our, if a package comes in and we're away, "Hey, bring that in for me and I'll pick it up when I get home." I like that. So I'm not faulting people for keeping an eye on each other, for keeping an eye. I think that makes good neighbors. That makes a good neighborhood. It makes a safe neighborhood because if something's out of place pretty instantly. And hey, I don't recognize that car that's in my neighbor's driveway and they're taking the furniture out of the house.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I should call somebody. But what happens is in some cases, people get involved and then they call in the authorities and then they call the police. And oftentimes it's for nothing more than kids just playing in the playground by himself. Heaven forbid. And next they're saying the kid's being neglected or he's being ignored or he must be from an abusive house if mom and dad aren't there with them. That's become a problem.
Yeah. And from personal experience, all it takes is for one person and the authorities, whether it's like a CPS person who gets a little overzealous and can ruin a life, really.
I'm not going to cast aspersions on the authorities who are responsible for taking care of child welfare. They have a job to do. It's not an easy job. You've got one person. In a case like this, you have one neighbor insisting that something's not right. You've got mom and dad saying, "No, it's okay." And most of the time it is. Sometimes it's not. And it's hard to sometimes figure out what the truth is.
Oh, I'm sure.
And what's actually going on. When I was an arson investigator with the fire department and with the sheriff's office, and we would deal with children who were setting fires. And we knew of things to watch for that may have indicated more than just kids playing, that maybe there was something else going on. And we had a lot of training in that.
Yeah.
We knew what to look for and signs, and that's what these people are doing too. So, there's some people who are overzealous, but I will say that it's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that if it's nothing more than a kid was down at the park playing by themselves or with their friends, and I'm not talking a 2 or 3 year old, obviously, a kid old enough to know how to get around, that nothing can come of that. If that's all it was, nothing can come of that. It's kids playing. It's kids doing what they're supposed to do. It's kids doing things that kids should do. Being kids, for crying out loud. That this is going to make sure that that's where it stays. And I really I hate seeing that we had to get to this point.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see that we got to this point where they're going to say, no, it's okay for kids to behave that way. And again, this is a thing you talked about, overzealousness. This started out with neighbors just kind of knowing what the other kids were doing because they're playing with their kids and stuff like that. Took 1 or 2 who wanted to make an issue of something and push it too far.
Yeah.
And now we get to these points. The law of unintended consequences, is kind of what happened here.
I like that it's a thing to become formalized because I grew up playing around the neighborhood, playing in this huge field next to our house. We did the same thing. There's these bunch of bushes, very large ones. So we turned them into forts and stuff because you could get underneath them. We put little chairs in them, and we would ride our little dirt bikes and such. It was a blast. There's also been a lot of research showing that a lot of modern suburbia people just don't know their neighbors, and that's a larger problem of society and such. It's a bad trend because I do remember as a kid, just like all the parents knew each other, all the neighbors did, and that's becoming more and more rare now. So instead of getting to know your neighbors, a lot of people, their first thing is to call the cops and stuff, and that just wastes time and resources that could be used elsewhere.
Well, we didn't have 100 channels on TV to watch, and we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have cell phones to occupy our time. We had to go talk to our neighbors.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, we had to talk to our neighbors. Holy cow. Now, in any neighborhood, you didn't get along with all your neighbors, but you knew who they were. You knew who their kids were. You knew who your kids, my mom and dad knew who we were playing with, and they knew not only the kids, but they knew their parents, and they knew who to call. And we would disappear for hours. We'd be in the woods playing, We would just be kids. And I get that horrible things have happened. And there's this perception that more horrible things have happened than happened before. I will argue that they've always been happening, but thanks to the internet and all that stuff, we're just more aware of things that have always been happening. Your odds are still that you're going to be perfectly safe in your neighborhood. The odds are that, nothing is going to happen to you. And I'm not telling parents that, you're a bad parent if you don't let your kid go to the playground by themselves. I'm not saying that at all. If you feel more comfortable going with your kid to the playground, that's fine. That's a decision you make. I'm not saying that you're a bad parent if you don't do that. I'm just saying that if there's a 4-year-old, or I shouldn't say the 4-year-old, if there's a kid there playing by himself and he seems to know what he's doing and he's having a good time and he's playing with your kids, he's probably just fine that he's there. And don't get too crazy about it. And I get it. It's a fine line. What do you feel comfortable with? What do you don't? Maybe you try to contact the parents and talk to them before you call the cops and get CPS involved, and you get people involved who are going to make people's life miserable if something goes south on this thing. There's a lot of gray area in this, I guess is what I'm getting at. There's a lot of gray area. The more you get to know your neighbors, like you talked about getting to know your neighbors, the more you get a feel for what's right, what's going well and what's not going well. I don't want to say right and wrong. That's the wrong word to use. But you get a better feel when things are off a little bit. The more you know your neighbors and you think, that seems a little off. That's not normal for them.
Yep,
Maybe I should just call my neighbor and make sure everything's okay. That's the kind of thing we're looking for. But yeah, we had to make a law. We have to make a law. That's wild. But again, though, kudos to Colorado. One of the things I love about Colorado is I think that for the most part we have sidestepped a lot of the partisan divide that's happened in the country over the last couple of years. We have our differences. We have some politicians who, on both sides, who have just gone off their respective deep end on one end or the other. But for the most part, we've avoided a lot of partisan divide. I'm happy to see that this law is bipartisan. It is being pushed through with almost no debate. We're like, we have to do this. Let's do it. Let's get it done. I like that. That we're doing that here, and it. A lot of the comments in here are like, really, you have to make this law? All right, we'll make this law. We'll do it. We'll get it done. Cool. I like to see that. And if you're out there and you're listening to this and you have a comment, let me know what it is. I'd like to hear it and hear what you have to say. A couple other things going on. There's a weird story. I don't know if I should say weird. There was a story in the High Country News that I got about some hunters who were charged with trespassing up in Wyoming. And I guess Wyoming, what's public land and what's private land is almost like a checkerboard.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So if you want to go from one black square to another black square, or a red square to a red square, there's a corner where they all meet. And how do you get from one to the other without going on somebody else's private land? So a couple of hunters figured out a way where they bring a stepladder with them and go over the corner to the other public land. And this is almost as bad as calling the cops on kids playing. And they ended up getting arrested because as they were climbing, they never touched private land. But apparently when they went over the ladder, they violated the airspace over private land.
What?
On a 6-foot step. I am not kidding. I will provide links to this. It is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Now, I read this story, and besides then they're going, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because who's going to be so trivial about this? But, I can't speak for the land mentality in Wyoming, but people have private land. They're welcome to protect it. So one of the things I thought about was, well, wait a minute. Since when do we have airspace? I can't stop.
Yeah.
I live within line of sight of Penrose Hospital. The medical helicopter flies back and forth over my house day and night. Can I tell them I don't want them flying over my house? Of course I can't. The big debate coming up with drones. You can, parks departments cannot forbid drones from flying over their parks. They can forbid you from operating them from within their parks. But if somebody's outside the park and flies it over a park, you can't do anything about it. So since when do landowners can claim airspace for somebody on a ladder?
Yeah.
And I sent this letter to the author. I said, what the heck? Talking about airspace and drones. And if somebody flew a drone over my backyard, according to the law, I can't do anything about it. I can't go out there with a shotgun and shoot it down. People have done that.
Yeah.
They were the ones who were arrested, not the person with the drone. But you would feel that your space has been invaded a little, I think. So they sent me back an email, and they actually had to write a follow-up column about the different Supreme Court decisions and laws about your airspace over your property. And I guess something had to do with somebody had a chicken ranch, not that chicken ranch, but a chicken ranch, and it's some Supreme Court case. In any case, I'll provide links to both columns. You can figure it out. But the big thing that struck me was how preposterous this seemed, that these guys were smart enough they had to bring a stepladder. So you're out here hunting. You're going to take down, in Wyoming, it's probably mostly like deer or pronghorn or something, not something huge, although there may be elk, depending on where they were in Wyoming. Not only do you have to drag that back, but now you've got to drag a stepladder around with you so you can climb over this imaginary corner. So you make sure you don't set a foot, for crying out loud, it's just a foot, on somebody's private land, and they come out there and call the sheriff on you and have you arrested or something like that. The whole thing is just, it seems to me to be completely preposterous. I don't get it. But I thought it would be something to share with everybody. And so all of you out there looking at your device, just the way Kevin's looking at me now with this puzzled look on his face, can read this thing and go, what the heck is this? In any case, it's out there, folks. It really is. At
least the hunters were, to me, it's very clear that they had good intentions with the ladder. They didn't take the easy way out by just walking over. They were being very, very intentional about respecting the private land. And I think the fact that they were still charged and arrested is for something so trivial. Like that's the kind of thing I would hope a sheriff would go like, okay, don't do that again, but like here's why I can't, and it just drop it. Because when they get arrested and charged, it's for something like that. It feels like it's such a waste of resources and time and money on all sides.
Apparently, in this case, the sheriff actually did go out there and say, yeah, whatever. And like you said,
okay.
But the landowner insisted, and here comes the sheriff again with warrants and sign here, press 5 copies, and be in court, in 3 weeks or whatever, the answer to these charges kind of thing. It's just, it's, and I get it. I mean, we've talked about this on here, this podcast many times. Don't trespass on private land. If the land says no trespassing, that means you too. You don't have any, whoever you think you are, you don't have any special privileges. Yeah. If it says no, then don't go unless you get the owner's permission. And a lot of places where people go hunting, the private landowner will allow hunters on there. But the caveat is you've got to go and ask first, get permission before you just go on. You just don't traipse on there. So I get that. I get that, you don't necessarily want people just running amok on your own property. We're 100% different than like Sweden, where everything is consumed to be public property. People can hike across your private property all they want. That's not the way it is here. I just think that this thing, when these guys brought it, they drug a stepladder around with them, for crying out loud. And even they must have been thinking, this is the stupidest thing we've ever done. But like you said, that's the rule, so this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And still end up in trouble with the law. I have names I want to call the landowner, but we've got a clean rating on this podcast, and I'm trying to keep it.
I would say from what you've told me about this case, the landowner is just cranky or bored, maybe.
Yeah. Or clearly, if this is the most important thing they have to do in their life, then they either lead a charmed life or a deeply troubled one. And I'm not sure which one it is, but it's either going to be, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. In any case, I'll provide links to the High Country News articles. You can read them there. Interested to see what you have to say when you read it. I posted a thing on my Facebook page, and I'll put a link in there. There's a publication called Shout Out Colorado, and they have them from different states. Someone nominated me to be included, and they wanted to talk to me about my photography, my outdoor advocacy, and journalism and stuff. And they did a very nice write-up of me. And I tried to thank as many people as I could, but I had very limited space. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to you, Kevin. Thanks to the listeners and the readers at the Indy, the listeners to this podcast, the people who follow me on my social media and provide very good feedback and ask questions. Thanks to all of you for this. I really, really do appreciate it. And I think if you read it, and I'll put a link in there, you can go to it. I think maybe some of you will learn some stuff about me you didn't know. Although I tend to be kind of an open book, but there may be some things in there that you didn't know about how I got to where I am today, which is talking to you all and having a good time chatting with everybody. So hopefully that happens. Kevin, did we mention the short hikes?
Not yet.
Okay. So the other thing I'm doing, and I'm going to pick everybody's brain. I put it out in my email last week. I'm going to work on a little project about everybody's favorite short hikes. Like think like a mile round trip hike, a hike you like that's really short, maybe 2 miles. It doesn't have to be an easy hike. It could be a hard mile hike. So before anybody says it, yeah, we got the incline.
Yeah.
But think if you have a favorite short hike, a hike that's real short but takes you to a neat place to look at or a great view or just a good place for families, or one that's really hard, drop me a line because I'm working on this little compilation of things for a column coming up in the paper. So if anybody can think of something like that, go to my website, click on Contact Bob, and just send me a note and say, hey, this is one I like, or this is what I like. And I had somebody reply already. Listener Linda replied, and she gave me a whole list of great short hikes that she likes. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. I don't know if I can use all of them, but I'll pick some really good ones on there and include them. Kevin, you have a short hike that you like that's a lot of fun?
The first one that comes to mind, and I usually bring friends on this hike who are from out of town, especially if where they're from is sea level. It's the Siamese Twins Trail in Garden of the Gods. If you park at the right parking lot, I think to not an arch, but it's like a window, but really cool formations are out there. I think it's just less than a mile. I think it's like maybe not even a half mile to get to them and then back.
Cool. That's exactly the kind of stuff we're looking at. And Siamese Twins is I was just out there last week. It's a great example. Even if you just go the shortest way up there and back, but if you do the loop around there, even that I don't think is anywhere near a mile. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. So if you all have a great short hike that you like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I just thought it would be kind of fun to just talk about. Maybe like Kevin said, you have people coming from out of town and they're at sea level and you don't want to overtax them, or you just want a place to go that's a good view and you want to see it.
Great photos too.
Yeah, the Siamese Twins is a fun place to shoot. Let me know. Drop me a line. Let me know, and maybe I'll include it in my column coming up. I'm not sure when I'm going to do it. Not this week. Working on something else, but let me know what you've got, and I think it'd be a fun thing to include in a fun little article. So
nice.
Kevin, you got anything else you want to talk about today?
No, I'm just really, really excited about the warmer week that's going to come up soon.
Yeah, but before that, we have cold and we have snow, so maybe enough snow. 5 to 9 inches last I heard. Unfortunately, this keeps delaying my trip out of here. Because we're getting ready to leave and something happened, then we're going, we'll leave on this day, and then, here comes some more weather, and then, maybe we'll have to leave on the next day. But that's okay. It is what it is. We just, roll with the punches kind of a thing.
Exactly.
We'll go from there. Well, folks, that's all we have for today and for this week, and thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.
We'll talk to you next time.
All right, buddy.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.